One conservative MP was blunt. This is not about denying treatment to those who truly need it, but we cannot allow psychopathic murderers to escape punishment through clinical arguments. If the system bends to that, we lose the very foundation of justice. Human rights advocates, on the other hand, argue that even the most despicable criminals deserve humane treatment and access to mental health care. But this argument hasn't gained much traction with the public, at least not in this case. Because here, what's at stake isn't just the mental health of a killer, it's the integrity of the justice system, the memory of the victims, and the public's trust. All of this is unfolding while other national crises continue to brew. The most recent, the freezing of university funds for nursing programs, a move that has thrown dozens of educational institutions into disarray and sparked new criticism against the Labor government. Meanwhile, many people are beginning to question whether decisions like this are pulling institutions further and further away from the real pain of the victims. Because talking about justice in legal or clinical terms is one thing, but facing the ongoing suffering of those who lost their children in such a cruel way is something else entirely. The idea that the man who murdered their daughters might be watching movies, receiving visits, or eating better than many law-abiding citizens feels, to them, utterly absurd. This situation has sparked a national conversation about the urgent need to reform the protocols that allow for such transfers. Some criminal law experts have argued that in cases involving heinous crimes, psychiatric evaluations should not carry the same legal weight, especially when the offenders have demonstrated full awareness of their actions. Meanwhile, several prosecutors have warned that if this trend becomes normalized, we could be facing a new form of impunity, disguised as medical treatment. And if this story has made you feel the same outrage that millions across the UK are experiencing, we invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just report the facts, we analyze them with seriousness, context, and no filters. Your subscription helps us continue creating independent, direct, and truth-driven content. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments. Every voice matters in this debate. As authorities continue to assess the future of Axel Rudekuber, the entire country watches closely, with quiet fury and with a growing sense that something deep within the system is broken. Because this is not just about a murderer and a possible transfer, it's about the message this sends, that justice can be diluted, that punishment can be replaced by comfort, and that the victims, once again, risk being forgotten. If cases like this outrage you as much as they outrage us, we urge you to subscribe to the channel right now. Here we bring you the stories others prefer to keep quiet, fully detailed, uncensored, and critically analyzed beyond the headlines. Your subscription not only helps us continue researching and publishing this kind of content, it also allows us to build a community that demands justice, truth, and accountability. Click the subscribe button and join us in this fight not to forget. The families of the murdered girls have responded with renewed pain to this possibility. For them, it's not just about a change in location, it's a symbolic degradation of the value of justice itself. The mere thought that the man who destroyed their lives might now live with more comforts, fewer restrictions, and under a therapeutic regime is simply unbearable. Several family members have publicly stated that such a move would be an insult to the memory of their daughters, and a slap in the face to the dignity of all victims. One mother, visibly devastated, told local media, "My daughter was stabbed over 100 times. How can they now tell us that this man deserves a comfortable bed, a television, and visitors? He's not a patient. He's a murderer, a monster, and he should stay exactly where he is, locked up, alone, paying for every scream he caused." And she's far from alone. Social media has been flooded with outrage. Digital platforms are overflowing with demands for the government to block any attempt to transfer him. Many users argue that this sets a dangerous precedent, one where violent killers could simply alter their behavior to deceive the system and gain undeserved privileges. But why would someone like Rudekuber be so desperate to leave Belmarsh? The answer lies in the sheer harshness of that environment. HMP Belmarsh is a Category A prison built to contain the most dangerous criminals in the country. Life there is far from easy. The cells are bare, the restrictions severe, and every movement is tightly controlled. There is no room for comfort or compassion. In contrast, high-security psychiatric units like Broadmoor or Ashworth operate under a very different philosophy. Though heavily fortified, the individuals housed there aren't treated as prisoners, but as patients. The focus isn't punishment, it's rehabilitation. They have access to therapy, recreational sessions, controlled entertainment, no barred cells, just private rooms, no prison routine, but personalized treatment plans. In essence, a softer life, more humane. And for someone like Rudekuber, that means an escape. Not just physical but psychological. And this is where the real dilemma begins. Should someone who committed such a horrific crime be entitled to this kind of treatment? Where do we draw the line between mental illness and pure evil? And what happens when a murderer simply pretends to be insane without actually being mentally ill? Many experts have warned that the UK's judicial and medical systems are not fully equipped to detect sophisticated manipulators, that some killers are capable of studying behavioral manuals, simulating symptoms, saying exactly what psychologists want to hear, and obtaining false diagnoses. And in extreme cases like this, the cost of a mistake isn't just financial, it's moral, social, and profoundly painful for the victims. There's also the economic impact to consider. Keeping someone in a high-security psychiatric facility like Broadmoor costs the British government over £325,000 per year per person. That's more than 6 times the cost of keeping someone in a Belmarsh prison cell. In times when austerity, public spending cuts, and a healthcare system crisis are daily concerns, that figure hits the average citizen's common sense like a punch to the gut. The unavoidable question is, why should the state spend so much money improving the quality of life for someone who showed absolute contempt for human life? What message does that send? That if you kill in cold blood but later fake insanity, you get a second chance, a status upgrade, a benefit? Prison staff seem to have no doubts. According to leaked testimonies, the vast majority of Belmarsh officers believe Ruda Cooper is faking it. They say he has shown a sudden change in behavior since learning he would be evaluated, that he now appears quieter, more thoughtful, distant, as if trying to fit the clinical profile of a psychiatric patient. One officer even described him as coldly intelligent, saying he's playing chess with the system, and he's several moves ahead. What's most unsettling is that under current NHS guidelines, his prior history of psychiatric treatment could tip the scales in his favor. Before the crime, Ruda Cooper had already been in contact with mental health services in the UK, although he was never considered a serious threat. That cracked open door is now being used by his lawyers to push for a transfer strategy, and if they manage to convince clinical evaluators, the Ministry of Justice may be forced to approve the move. Already, voices in Parliament have begun to speak out. Some MPs are demanding a review of mental health-based transfer policies in extreme crime cases. They are calling for legal exceptions for multiple murderers, or at the very least more rigorous scrutiny in cases involving child violence. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He was found guilty of 3 counts of murder, 10 of attempted murder, and possession of extremely dangerous items, a combat knife, a vial of lethal poison, and even a manual of Al-Qaeda tactics. Yet despite all this, today he's closer to receiving preferential treatment than he is to truly paying for his crimes. What makes this even more infuriating is that Ruda Cooper had previously been in contact with mental health services before committing the murders. This prior connection with the UK's healthcare system may now be used as a key argument for his transfer, exploiting the current NHS guidelines. For many, this is the clearest demonstration of how a criminal can learn to exploit the loopholes in the legal system. Is he a mentally ill man who deserves treatment, or a monster who should spend the rest of his life behind bars under the strictest regime possible? This debate is far from theoretical. If doctors conclude that he suffers from a mental illness, and if the Ministry of Justice signs off, Ruda Cooper could go from living in a cold, lonely cell to enjoying what many see as an undeserved luxury. And this isn't just about Axel Ruda Cooper. It opens up a much broader and urgent discussion. Can a killer manipulate the system to gain benefits? Where does justice for the victim stand? Are we dealing with a legal loophole or a complete moral breakdown? What once seemed like a closed case, buried behind the walls of the UK's toughest prison, has now taken a turn that many see as a mockery of justice. Axel Ruda Cooper, the perpetrator of one of the most heinous child murders in the country's recent history, may soon leave his cell at HMP Belmarsh and move into a far more comfortable institution. Yes, you read that right. The same man who spread terror during a Taylor Swift-themed children's dance class in the summer of 2024 could be leaving behind the gray walls of a maximum security prison to be transferred to a psychiatric hospital where the living conditions and privileges are significantly softer. This development has sparked outrage among prison staff and the public alike. Why? Because this isn't just about a transfer. It's about changing his status from prisoner to patient, from punishment to treatment, from barred cells to televisions and more frequent visits. And all of this simply because a group of psychiatrists might rule him mentally ill, not evil. Ruda Cooper, currently serving a life sentence at Belmarsh, Belmarsh, an institution known for housing some of the country's most dangerous offenders, has recently undergone a series of in-depth psychological evaluations. Experts, therapists, and psychiatrists have been scrutinizing his behavior, looking for signs of a mental illness that could justify a dramatic change in his custody. According to sources close to the case, a key preliminary assessment has already been conducted, one that could pave the way for Rudekuber to be relocated to a high-security psychiatric hospital such as Broadmoor, Ashworth, or Rampton. Though these institutions are meant for patients with severe mental disorders, their environment is drastically different from that of a strict prison regime. But what's truly enraged security personnel and the general public is the growing belief that this is all part of a calculated strategy. An insider stated, "No one in Belmarsh believes Rudekuber is actually sick. They claim he's playing a role, saying just enough to convince the evaluators." In other words, he may be manipulating the system to escape the harsh realities of prison life. And the difference between the two realities is significant. If the change is approved, Rudekuber would no longer be confined to a bare, closely monitored cell. Instead, he would receive a far more lenient treatment: his own private room without bars, regular access to television and audiovisual materials, and even more flexible visitation rules. All of this, of course, funded by British taxpayers at a yearly cost exceeding £300,000, nearly 6 times more than keeping him in prison. This has triggered not only anger among those who work in the prison system, but also a wave of public outrage, particularly among the families of the victims, because Rudekuber's crimes weren't just murders, they were acts of unspeakable brutality committed against innocent little girls in a place where they were supposed to feel safe. July 29th, 2024 will forever be remembered as a cursed date. On that day, in a Southport dance school, 3 young girls, Alistair da Silva Aguar, 9, Burby King, 6, and Elsie Dos Stankum, 7, were viciously murdered by Rudekuber during a themed class celebrating Taylor Swift's music. 8 more people were seriously injured in the surprise attack. During the trial, horrifying details emerged. One girl had been stabbed over 120 times, another more than 80. Forensic experts were shocked by the level of violence. And perhaps the most disturbing fact, Rudekuber showed no remorse whatsoever. He refused to enter the courtroom voluntarily and had to be removed twice after violently lashing out, as if he couldn't face the reality of his actions, or simply